Everyone is loud. Not in the way people usually mean when they say that. Not voices, not music, not the kind of noise that stops when you close a door or put in headphones. Loud in a way that lives behind your eyes and underneath your skin. Loud in a way that has been there since you were 4 years old, and you told your mother that the man at the grocery store was scared. His wife didn't love him anymore, and your mother looked at you with a face you didn't have the vocabulary for yet. You do now. It was the face of someone deciding never to ask a follow-up question. You are 26 years old. Your name is Leo, and you have heard every thought in every room you have ever walked into. The barista who makes your coffee every morning is running calculations about her rent, and whether her sister will pay her back, and whether her boyfriend means it when he says he loves her, or whether he is just afraid of being alone. The man who sits across from you on the subway is thinking about a parking ticket from 3 weeks ago, with the specific circular guilt of someone who knows they deserved it. The woman in the elevator is composing a resignation letter in her head. She has been composing it for 11 months. She will not send it. You know all of this the way you know the sound of rain. Automatic, constant, not something you chose, not something you can turn off. We stopped trying to turn it off at 14. That was the year you understood that the trying was worse than the hearing, because at least the hearing was just noise. The trying was noise, plus the specific despair of failing at something every single second of every single day. So you stopped. Most people, when they imagine what you have, imagine power. They imagine knowing what someone really thinks of you, knowing when someone is lying, knowing what to say because you already know what they need to hear. What they don't imagine is the weight. The sheer, relentless, unfiltered weight of 10,000 people's interior lives pressing against the inside of your skull every single day. What they don't imagine is that you stopped eating in restaurants at 17 because a crowded room at dinner is not a room of people enjoying food. It is a room of people worrying about money and health, and whether their children are okay, and whether they themselves are okay, and whether anyone will notice if they are not. You have never once sat in a crowded room and felt less alone, until her. You meet her on a Tuesday in October in the waiting room of a dentist's office on the 4th floor of a building you've never been in before. The chairs are green, not a pleasant green. The green of something institutional, chosen by someone who needed a color and chose the cheapest one that wasn't beige. There is a fish tank in the corner with one fish in it that looks deeply uninterested in being a fish. There are 4 other people in the waiting room. You hear all of them the moment you sit down. The man in the corner is afraid of the needle and running through a negotiation with himself about whether fear of needles at his age is embarrassing. The woman by the window is making a grocery list in her head with the focus of someone defusing a bomb. The teenage boy near the door is thinking about a girl in his chemistry class with the desperate repetitive intensity of someone who has thought of nothing else for weeks. And then there is her. She is sitting 2 seats away from you. Dark hair. A coat the color of a winter sky right before it decides to snow. A magazine open in her lap that she is not reading. She is looking at the fish tank. And from her direction, from the space she occupies in that green-chaired room, there is nothing. Not quiet, not a whisper, not the soft background murmur of someone thinking gently. Nothing. You feel it the way you feel a drop in temperature. Immediate, physical, wrong in a way you don't have a word for yet, because in 26 years of living you have never needed that word. You check. Because the first thing your brain does is assume something has broken inside you. You look at the man in the corner, still afraid of the needle. You look at the woman by the window. She has moved on from vegetables and is now debating between 2 types of pasta. You look at the boy. Still the girl from chemistry. Completely, helplessly, the girl from chemistry. Everything is working, everything is intact, and she is still silent. You look at her. She doesn't look at you. She turns a page of the magazine she isn't reading. Her fingers move the paper with the casual habit of someone whose hands need something to do while the rest of them is somewhere else. You sit there for 11 minutes before your name gets called. You count them. 11 minutes of sitting 2 seats away from a person who gives you absolutely nothing. And what you feel is not confusion or frustration or the clinical curiosity of someone analyzing an anomaly. What you feel is relief. The deep, structural exhale from somewhere in your chest, kind of relief that you didn't know you'd been holding your breath against until just now. She is gone when you come back out. You spend the next week thinking about noise. Specifically, you spend it noticing the noise the way you haven't in years. The thoughts of the guy who delivers your packages, a fantasy involving a promotion that has been promised 3 times and not given once, sharpening now into something close to decision. The woman at the pharmacy counter, rehearsing a conversation with her mother that she knows will not go the way she is rehearsing it, but she keeps rehearsing because the rehearsal is the only part she controls. Your downstairs neighbor, thinking about his father. The thinking having the quality of something he does at the same time every day. A ritual of remembering built to keep the memory from fading. You hear all of it. You have always heard all of it, But for 7 days you hear it differently, because now you have heard the alternative. Now you know what it sounds like when someone doesn't leak into you. Now you know what it would feel like to sit next to a person and not know them immediately and completely against your will. It would feel like being given your own mind back. You find her again on a Wednesday afternoon in a bookshop, the kind of bookshop that exists on a side street and smells like old paper and has a single overhead light in the back section that flickers once every 3 minutes, with the reliability of something that has been meaning to be fixed for years. You are in that back section when you turn a corner, and there she is. Same coat, different book, same silence. She looks up this time. You are standing close enough that you should hear something. Everyone gives off something at close range, even guarded people, even people who have built walls. You always get through. It is not something you choose. It simply happens the way your eyes focus when you look at something. You don't decide to see. You just see. From her, at 4 feet, on a Wednesday afternoon, you hear nothing. She says, "You're staring." You say, "Sorry, I thought I recognized you." She says, "You don't." She's right, you don't. Not in the way she means. And yet something in the way she says it. Not defensive, not dismissive, just factual. The way you'd say the sky is overcast or the shop closes at 6 makes you want to stay in the sentence a little longer. Not because she's wrong. Because for the first time in your life you want to know something about a person that you cannot simply reach in and take. You say, "Dentist's office, a week ago, green chairs." She looks at you for a moment, assessing. You wait for the thought behind the look. You always get the thought behind the look. You get nothing. She says, "The fish tank." You say, "One fish." She says, "It seemed lonely." And that is how it starts. You see her 6 more times over the following month. Coffee once, a walk that was supposed to be an hour and became 3. Dinner at a restaurant quieter than most because you asked her to pick somewhere quiet, and she said she always picks somewhere quiet and neither of you asked why. 3 more times after that, the kind of times that happen when 2 people keep finding reasons to exist in the same space, and neither of them has said that out loud yet. Every time, the silence holds. Every time you sit across from her, and there is nothing coming from her direction but what she chooses to give you. Her words, her expressions. Her silences, which are actual silences, not the loaded pauses you get from everyone else where you already know what the pause is covering before it finishes. You don't know what her pauses are covering. You have to wait and find out when she decides to fill them. You have to ask. For the first time in your adult life, you have to ask another person what they are thinking and sit with not knowing and believe whatever they tell you. You have no way to verify it. You have no access to the version underneath the version they're giving you. It is the strangest feeling you have ever had. It is also, quietly and undeniably, the most alive you have felt in years. On the 5th week, you are in her apartment on a Sunday morning. She makes coffee the way people make coffee when they have thought about it, made small adjustments over time, and now have a process. She has a process for most things. You notice this about her without being able to hear why. The noticing is new. You have spent 26 years understanding people immediately and completely. You have never had to watch someone long enough to learn them. She brings 2 cups, sits across from you, wraps both hands around hers, looks at you with an expression you have been trying to decode for 5 weeks without success. She says, "Can I ask you something?" You say yes. She says, "What is it like, being around people?" Not a question, the way most questions are questions. A question the way a key is a key, shaped for a specific lock. You go still. She says it without accusation, without anything in her voice that suggests she knows. On the surface, it is a reasonable thing to wonder about someone you are getting to know. Some people find crowds draining, some find them energizing. Normal territory. But the angle of it. What is it like? Not do you prefer quiet, not are you an introvert. What is it like? As if she already knows it is like something specific. As if she is asking you to describe a room she knows you have been living in. You say, "Loud." She nods, looks at her coffee. You say, "What made you ask that?" She says, "You move through spaces like someone who already knows what's in them." The silence between you stretches, her silence, giving you nothing but the words she chooses. You have sat in rooms with people and known their fears and their small daily shames and their recurring anxieties and the things they would never say out loud. You have known all of them completely, and it has made you lonelier than anyone who has never heard a single thought but their own. And she just described you with a precision that takes most people years to develop about someone they love. You say carefully, "What do you mean?" she says. You scan a room when you walk in. Not like you're looking for someone, like you're adjusting to something, like you're tuning an instrument before you can play. She takes a sip of her coffee. She says, "I used to do that too." The words used to land in the room between you and stay there. You say, "What changed?" She looks at you for a long moment, her face doing something you cannot read and have never been able to read and have spent 5 weeks watching for. Then she says something that rearranges the furniture of everything you thought you understood about why you kept coming back to this apartment, to this person, to this specific and inexplicable quiet. She says, "I learned how to be quiet." You understand immediately, not the details, not the how, but the shape of it. The what? You say, "How long?" She says, "Since I was 19. You say, "Is it something you do on purpose?" She says, "It was at first. Then it became like breathing." You sit with that. The coffee cools. Outside, the city continues. Someone below the window is laughing too loud in the way people laugh when they're performing happiness for a group. Further away, a delivery truck, a dog, the low ambient hum of 10,000 people thinking 10,000 things. You hear none of it right now, because the only thing that exists in this moment is the woman across from you who figured out at 19 how to do what you have spent 26 years wishing everyone would do, who has been sitting across from you in perfect interior silence while you fell into the quiet of her the way you fall into sleep, without deciding to, without being able to stop. You say, "Why didn't you say anything?" She says, "I wasn't sure you knew what you were doing." You say, "I don't. I've never been able to explain it to anyone." She says, "I know." And there it is, not dramatic, not a confrontation with music behind it. Just 2 words on a Sunday morning from a woman holding a cup of coffee with both hands. You say, "So you knew?" She says, "I suspected." From the dentist's office. She almost smiles. She says, and then, quieter, "So did you." The silence that follows is hers and yours together. The first shared silence you have ever had with another person. Real silence. The kind that doesn't need to be filled because it is already full. You think about what it means to know a person, actually know them. Whether it is knowing the thoughts behind their face, or knowing the face itself, watching it long enough and carefully enough that the expressions become a language you have learned the slow way. The real way. The way that costs something. You have never learned anyone slowly. You have never had to. She is watching you think. She can't hear it. That is the point. She cannot hear it, and she is watching you anyway, and she is waiting the way people wait when they trust that what is coming is worth waiting for. You say, "I don't know how to do this." She says, "Do what?" You say, "Know someone without just knowing them." She considers this. Outside, the argument below the window resolves into laughter. The delivery truck moves on. She says, "It's slower." You say, "I know." She says, "You have to ask questions, then believe the answer even when you can't verify it." You say, "That sounds like trust." She says, "That's exactly what it sounds like." The coffee is cold. Neither of you moves to do anything about it. You have spent your entire life knowing what every room costs before you walk into it. You have budgeted and braced and managed and survived. You've never once walked into something not knowing what was on the other side. You have been walking toward her for 5 weeks. You still don't know what's on the other side. You're going to find out the way everyone else finds out, slowly, imperfectly, one chosen word at a time, without the shortcut, without the access, without the ability to reach past what someone gives you and take what they haven't offered yet. It is the most frightening thing you have ever decided to do. It is the first thing you have ever done that belongs entirely to you.